2, 1. Thank you very much, everybody who's joined us. We are here for our board budget subcommittee, a process where we have a meeting that is recorded and live so that there can be questions asked regarding fiscal aspects of our board agenda. And Mr. Battle will not be with us today, so I'll be helping to facilitate this meeting. And as we move forward with that, this is normally where we will hand it over to our trustees. So Trustee Zhang, would you like to maybe start us through that and see if there's anything on the agenda that you want to start with, or would you like me to kind of work us through the agenda? What would be your preference?
I guess I can start with some items that I have questioned.
Okay.
Okay, so then we just move to I guess move to item 10. Number 10.
Number 10 for our audience is our consent calendar on student learning and achievement. So go ahead.
Right, and then the question on that number 10.4.
Yes.
So this question is what should I say? So last year we have no, my question is you see on the summary, and we have benefits of it at 27%. I mean, if you look at the spreadsheet.
Yes. So I'm not sure, Rais or Robbie, if you're able to respond to that piece. I can give you my best understanding of that. And generally, when we contract with an agency like Seneca, we have pieces that are directly related to salary. And then Seneca as an agency may have an established rate at which they're charging us for benefits at 27%. And so that would be added to the salary totals for the total personnel costs.
So is that normal? I mean, is that normal for us to do this?
Well, yes and no. So in a broad context, we have salaries for our own employees, and then the term benefits can sometimes be referred to as medical benefits, or there are other associated employee benefits that an employer pays. And so there are occasions where we have our own adjustment above salary that we consider when we look at compensation for an employee. And when we contract for services, which is what we're doing here, we're contracting for a percentage of the salaries. And it is common for a contracting agency to also charge us a respective rate for the benefits for their employees as well. Robbie, did you have any additional information?
Yes, sir. The benefits would be those mandatory benefits like Social Security, which is 6.2%, the Medicare at 1.45, unemployment insurance at 0.05 for this year is 1.05. Next year is going to be higher, and other kind of statutory benefits that they include. Just looking at hours for a classified employee, the maximum that we end on the employer cost is a good 32.29% for our district.
I see. And okay, 32. And I see the number is pretty precise. I mean, it's like the expense and overhead. It's so accurate, come to a decimal point. How do you come up with that?
Well, one way that they're able to come up with such a precise amount is, again, that this is a renewal, so they probably have very accurate numbers of what's happened historically. And Seneca as an agency has these types of agreements with many school districts across the Bay Area. And so they're taking their total costs and then they're putting together a percentage on the staffing. And that comes out to be very accurate because they have real people in those positions and they can break that down. In
Mm-hmm.
terms of the remainder of the budget,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that they're building that off of established mileage and established positions so they can have pretty accurate projections. Robbie, do you have any other insight on that?
I agree with you, sir. And usually on the salary side is that they probably already negotiated the salary for those positions.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to the operations, it's basically historical costs that they have incurred in the past.
Okay, so then based on the historic data, right? Then we're gonna agree on this.
Yes, I would assume that, sir, ma'am.
Okay, but do you think that in the future it could be very, deviate from this number
It
more or
could
less?
be it could be lower.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, what they're doing is they're breaking it to us down. What is their cost, and that's what they're passing it to us.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think this is typically any private organization has their HR costs broken down into fixed cost and overhead. So things like insurance and medical benefits and other whatever benefits they may be offering the employee. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a very well defined number. Then they divide it based on headcount, and that becomes your number. So every year, as they negotiate their contracts with their providers, this number can shift, and we'll see
Mm-hmm.
a slightly different number. But typically, it won't vary by a whole lot.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. Well, anyone else have any questions on any items? Oh, student Kong, not
Uh,
forgetting about you.
I don't think I have any budgeting questions today. Yeah.
Okay. So, boy, wow. Look at
So-
Vivek. You look like you're in the airplane. Uh-huh. So now
Then I would have a mask on. But just to CJ, and it's other which items here. I mean, the main item this time is the back to return to school, but the remaining items, which ones have specific budget impact? We should just walk through each one very briefly to see if there are any specific comments.
Okay, I can do that. And as we do that, I'm just going to check in real quickly. Rais, did we have any public comments submitted for our meeting today?
No, CJ, I did not get any comments.
Okay, thank you so much. So to kind of look at our regular agenda items, as Trustee Prasad pointed out, 15.1 is our return to in-person instruction. And then we have a resolution for Asian American and Pacific Islander condemning the violence against Asian American and Pacific Islanders. And that does not have a fiscal connection. At 15.3, we have another resolution that does not have an immediate fiscal connection. The other area that the next item, 15.4, that does carry a fiscal connection is the 7-Eleven committee report. And to summarize that as concisely as I can, this is regarding our Marshall or Melendez site. And for any audience that may be watching, that is the same site, but over the course of time, it has been referred to by two different titles. And the board and the district have gone through a process of establishing a 7-Eleven committee, which has reviewed and researched this property, held a number of community input meetings, and is making a recommendation to the board to surplus the property. And what it means when we surplus the property is that means that then the board and the district have the opportunity to sell or lease the property. And surplusing is a different term than we might think about, but I've encouraged people to always think about it. We even surplus, for example, old books. And so when a district is getting rid of an asset, there's a process they have to go through to surplus that asset. And in this case, the recommendation is to surplus the property. And at that point, then the board would be able to consider some different options. And based on our estimates, the land use has been estimated to be sold for anywhere between 4 to 5 million per acre. and which we think that would be anywhere between about 10.5 million to just over 13 million if we were to sell the land, and to lease it would bring in about $3 per square foot. And interestingly enough, this is a provision in the Ed Code that allows us to use this revenue for our general fund, which oftentimes is not the case. Normally, the sale of any land has to be restricted to facility enhancements. So that is a unique aspect of the current time. And this would be an item that does have some fiscal implications if there's any questions or comments on that.
Well, I actually have a lot of questions on this one. So then we must make a decision at the board meeting on Wednesday?
Well, I will ask our director, Kelly Lynch McMahon, to weigh in on this as well. But what is in front of the board on Wednesday is the decision whether or not to surplus the property. And I don't think that there is an additional decision beyond that. The first decision point is surplusing the property. Director Lynch McMahon, do I have that summarization correct?
Yes, that is correct. That was the task of the committee, was to come back with a recommendation to either surplus or to not surplus. The steps that are required after that decision, then that's outside of our purview. And we will then, proceed forward once we have direction after the decision is made.
Okay, so then to surplus means we must sell, or can we still rent?
We
Rent
can
it
still
out.
lease.
Mhm.
So we can lease the property and we can sell the property as well. So I'm sure Fremont has had examples of this in the past prior to my arrival, but in another district where I worked, we had a parcel that we surplused, and at one point we sold that parcel, and we utilized that money to improve facilities elsewhere. And we had another parcel that we did not sell, but we engaged in a 15 or 20-year lease with a private company, and that generated annual income for the district. So once we surplus, those are really the options that then sit in front of the board. And it's also dependent, as is the case with most things in terms of real estate, is, what are the interested parties out there, and who may be interested in using that land for what purpose.
Correct.
Well,
And I was
yes,
gonna say, I did check in with our legal counsel, and they said that Superintendent Kamick is correct, that, once it's surplus, you have those two options. But also, I believe one of the questions previously was if the district changes their mind, as long as we have not sold the property, we have the board has the ability to make a decision with what to do with the property either way. And she said it's very easy for us, once we say, oh, we decide, hey, we want to go ahead and lease it and use it. Once we decide or lease it to someone for instructional use or whatever school usage, it no longer is surplus. It's like an automatic sort of default position that the property returns to. So those are our options, and she will be providing a written response for us to fully understand what the legal ramifications are.
okay, because I think if we don't need money immediately, I would like to hold on to it and then sell in few years, because then the value is going to go up. And the land is always go up. Then we can get more money for that. That's my thinking, seriously. And but also we must be selling before the deadline, right? Then we can still use it as a general fund. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, there will be a time at which the provision where we can use this for general fund will likely go away. And so
Right.
we'll want to be cognizant of that. And, the other point to think about is, as is outlined in the board agenda, there's a point at which the education code actually penalizes us for
Right.
holding on to additional land. And so we'll have to weigh out what's the cost analysis on that. And maybe
But-
it's worth it to pay the penalty, maybe it's not. So those would be considerations as well.
Right, but that is in year 2024. So we still have a couple of years, and I want to see what are the best use of it. Can we? I mean, we're really serious to look at whether we need the money right now and who we can rent it out for a certain time, and we can shop for the best, buyer. It's this, we cannot make such a quick decision on this.
So the decision, just to reiterate, for Wednesday is only to surplus.
Okay.
And the use of, well, let me rephrase that. The
Mhm,
decision on Wednesday is whether or not to surplus.
mhm.
We aren't going to be making a decision on Wednesday night about whether or not we lease it or sell it and to whom. That's a conversation that is still going to come forward to the board in the future.
Okay. But I have also a question is why, I mean, when did we buy the property? Why didn't we do some due diligence before we bought it and realized there is a pipe, a high pressure pipe underneath?
Well, I think I
ahead, I'm
can't
sorry.
speak to when we bought it, but I can speak to that this is not an issue just unique to Fremont Unified. There's a number of schools across the state that, as the Department of State Architecture has changed their rules and regulations to respond to incidents that have happened, there are other schools across the state that have been in place. And what happens is when you then try and improve those facilities and you go to the Department of State Architecture or to the state and say, we want to improve this facility, then what ultimately happens is a rule that maybe didn't exist 20 years ago or 30 years ago is now in place, and it changes the parameters of how we work. So that's really the circumstance that I think is true for the Marshall property. And I know it's true for districts in the Bay Area, especially where oil refineries are very common and there's a lot of high pressure pipes and pipelines that other schools and other school districts have run into the same predicament.
Okay. Yeah, I see Kelly want to make a comment, right, Kelly?
No, Superintendent Kamick actually reiterated the same point that I was going to make.
I just want to add that the Marshall was acquired in 1962.
Oh, okay, that's a long time ago. Okay.
Yeah,
I
so
s-
I suppose we wanted to renovate and repurpose, right? And during that, DSA decided that, well, they discovered this pipeline. So now we can't use it for our own use. And the decision that we have to discuss and make on Wednesday is, do we want to surplus or not? Then the disposition will have to be decided. Then the staff can work on finding what disposition options are available. Then we talk about disposition.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Then shall we move to the next one?
Sure. Then the next one is our school fee justification study. And this is something that has to be completed on an annual basis. And this process includes a study that has to be published and adopted by the board. And this fee justification study is pursuant to the Ed Code, and it basically is required to allow the district to continue levying developer fees, and it helps establish what is the appropriate rate that you can levy those fees at. So for us, this would be to adopt the study so that we can continue to levy level 1 developer rates on both residential and commercial development within Fremont Unified School District.
Okay. So we have to do a study.
Yes, and we utilize a third-party firm to help us with that study, which is a common practice for school districts because these firms do this on a regular basis. And so in this case, the firm that we've utilized, I believe, is Coppell and Gruber, and they put together the justification study, and it outlines the entire study, which we have to have adopted by the board. And the developer fees are an important part for us to secure some additional funding, and those developer fees are restricted in some regards, but they still are certainly important fees for us, especially with development that's taking place in the community.
So basically just find a comparative analysis for us. Right?
In essence,
Basically,
yes.
market rate.
yes, it is establishing that we are putting our rates within a parameter that is allowed within the education code.
Okay, great. And how often do we do this? Once, every twice a year or something? Oh, no,
I
no, no.
believe this is annual. Robbie, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Oh, yes, sir. That is true.
Okay. Okay, sure. That's a great thing to do. Then what else?
Then we have item 15.6, which is
Mhm.
our attendance area assignments for planned housing developments. This comes before the board. This is the second time I've seen it this year, and this is my first year in Fremont. So I'm going to say that it comes before the board twice a year.
Mhm.
And this is where the board reviews where we are assigning developments, what attendance area we are assigning them to, or if we're
Mhm.
leaving them unassigned.
Well, if we leave them unassigned, what does that mean?
That means, and I don't know, Robbie or Rais, if you have any more historical context on that.
So legally speaking, unassigned is assigned actually, because we are saying that they are unassigned, and in the future we are going to assign to a school site.
Mhm.
So if we leave it blank, it means they are completely not assigned to anything. Unassigned means that they are going to have a future assignment to a school site.
Right, but then so if they are unsigned, when there is kids in those area, where do they go?
Usually that depends on the future developments. So when we have a new builder coming to Fremont, and they
Okay,
say they're building a new parcel,
I see.
they want assignment to a school site.
I see. Got it. Wow. So then do they see if we assign them to a better school with a better rating? So then that means our then we should charge them more of a development fee, right? They should all tie together.
Well,
You
our
know, better
developer-
school.
Our,
Yeah.
our developer fee is based on the district as a whole. So
I
we're
see.
we're
Got
only
it.
allowed to charge a development fee or developer fee for Fremont Unified as the district. So there's not a
Okay.
direct connection there exactly,
Okay.
but certainly the unassigned areas and assigned areas are something that's very important. And we do have a demographer that assists us with this as well.
Okay, great.
And our position is we only have excellent schools in Fremont. So that's
Vivek, politically correct.
This is not an issue anymore, but when we had the increasing enrollment some years ago, we had a huge enrollment growth. At that time, we had a huge construction at the same time. That was an issue at that time, that which school is going to be assigned to a new property developed. And parents like to see a very good school assigned. At that time, we had some issues and some legal issues as well. But now we have declining enrollment. That's not the issue anymore.
I see.
One good example that I could think of, if my memory is correct, is that in the north side of Fremont, where they built the housing development in North Fremont, they wanted to be assigned to either Ardenwood or Forest Park. But because of those two schools are heavily impacted, they don't have any more classrooms available for projected growth in that enrollment on that place. They were assigned somewhere else.
I see. Okay.
I forgot the name of this developer that's here in the north side of Fremont. KB Homes.
Oh, KB Home. Okay, that's
Yes.
big one.
so I do have a conflict at 5:30, so I need to drop.
Okay.
So maybe you can continue.
I can, thank you. And thank you, Trustee Prasad. We will continue for the duration.
Okay, thank you very much.
I see you from the airplane, and now suddenly landed in your home, and now you're going away again. I'll see you later.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
So our next agenda item is the settlement between SEIU and Fremont Unified School District. This does have a fiscal implication, and this was to resolve a compensation issue for our substitute custodians. And the settlement resolution is there for the board's approval.
Right. Yeah,
And-
we are aware of that one.
15.8 is the authorization for the district staff to enter into an agreement with Lathrop Construction for
Mhm.
the construction services and modernization of Hopkins. And Kelly, if I'm looking at this right, we had 3 qualified bidders and Lathrop was the most responsive. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And Lathrop was the apparent low bidder for this particular project, and we are recommending that we are given permission to award to them. And this project did fall within our engineer's estimate and budget that we had established for the project.
Thank you.
Okay.
And the next item is project stabilization agreement for coordination of services with, is it Davlier Sloan?
Yes, Davier.
Okay, thank you, for the modernization at Hopkins.
And this also is another contract that is very similar to the other project contracts that we have with the other middle schools that have been completed. And so this is just the contract for them to go ahead and, procure their services and have them get started.
You mean this 15.9?
Yes,
But then 15.9 and 15.8, they are all doing the new construction and modernization.
correct.
See that? And what's the difference between this Davila slogan and whatever? And
So
then this-
Lathrop Construction is the general contractor
Mhm.
that will be awarded the contract. And Davier Sloan is the project stabilization consultant that will perform the labor compliance and certified payroll monitoring.
Okay, is this one you call that what called ASP? What is the thing? Is that property management? Am I?
AS.
Oh,
AS.
Are you-
PSA,
the
right?
PSA?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is our project stabilization agreement, or sometimes it's referred to as a PLA, project labor agreement.
Uh-huh.
And so this is the coordination of those services.
Okay, all right. So is that they are monitor the cost? Is that right?
They don't monitor the cost. They monitor the contractor to ensure that the labor force that he hires are paid on time and
Uh-huh.
are paid the prevailing wages that are required for Alameda County for their various trades. And to ensure that they're not being, paid under the table or shortchanged in any way
Mhm.
while they're working on this project.
Mm-hmm. I see that provide this PSA coordination on every project, right? Is that a up limit? I mean, it's like over $1 million, we should hire this kind of service.
I'm not sure I understand your question. Can you please?
I see this PSA a lot.
Yes.
It's like, is that over $1 million project? We would actually require to get the PSA service.
So do we
Oh,
have a
and-
threshold at which the PSA is enacted?
Oh, I see. Yes, we
Yes.
do have an agreement in place with the Alameda County Trade Council
Uh-huh.
and the various unions that I believe it's any project over $250,000. We are required to engage the PSA stabilization agreement.
I see. And is this cost is pretty standard, like this one is 544,000.
Yes, that is standard. And you also have to remember, this is a multi-year contract. So it is not a 12-month contract. This is for the entire duration of the project. So in Hopkins, this is not going to end until fall of 2023.
Right. So Callie, do you how do you come up with this how do you come up with, let's say, choose them to be your coordination service. You also do several bids to get the,
Yes,
I see.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you for that. Okay, then what else? Oh, what else shall we do?
The next
this-
we have is our authorization to purchase Chromebooks,
Uh-huh,
and that is through LCAP funding. And we are looking at the cost of about $281 per unit. And
Uh-huh.
that total cost for 2,874 Chromebooks is just over $800,000. And so
mm-hmm,
we're seeking the authorization for those purchases.
mm-hmm. Okay, but that we have to do.
Right. And then
Um,
the last item is the report out on the liaison city council meeting for our liaison city council liaison meetings. And the report out is for the meeting that happened back in March on March 23rd.
Mm-hmm. So that one prepared. Yeah, I mean, I still have to give you that for next meeting. I cannot think of anything right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I do have a question, like going back on this. I think it's the layoff of no, it's kind of eliminate the position on the staff. No, on the employee position.
Mhm.
So yeah, on the 12.3, review and approval classified layoffs.
Correct.
So I need clarification on, I understand that we must do that by March or certain time, but then why this one is asking for the position eliminated by June 30?
So, great question. And the difference is that in most cases, both of the reductions, whether it's March 15th or what's listed here, they all end in June because they end with the fiscal year, which is June 30th.
Mm-hmm.
But because some positions are certificated and some positions are classified, they have different rules in the education code. So for certificated employees, which is
Mhm.
anybody who holds a credential,
Mm-hmm.
they have to be provided a notice that they won't be returning by March 15th, or they automatically get to return for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
For classified employees, which is this group, our paraeducators, the
Mm-hmm.
education code says that they have to be given 60 days notice before the end of their position. And so
Okay.
the rules are a little bit different for classified and certificated employees,
Mm-hmm.
but in both cases, we're notifying the employee that they'll be no longer employed with the district in June.
I
It just
see.
depends. It depends on when their work year ends. So it's a good question by you because there are differences between the classified and certificated process to eliminate a position.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
I guess that's my question.
I
What
had
else?
on the Chromebooks. So with the since 10,000 are going out of life, and then we're getting a little bit less than 3,000. Is there like a plan to for the other 7,000 plus, or is it, yeah?
Yes, that's a great question, student board member Khan. So we're going to continue to phase in the replacements, and I know Lucas, our chief technology officer, is working on those. And the other thing that I want people to know is end of life is kind of, it has two meanings in the sense that it doesn't mean that that Chromebook stops working in September and it will never work again. But what it means is that it stops being able to be updated with the software. And so this is kind of a tricky part for the software computer industry because they're making it turn around so quickly that, excuse me, that we keep having to buy computers. But ultimately what it means is these Chromebooks could still be used in the classroom for a lot of activities for a number of different things. But a great example is when we do our SBAC testing annually, we have to update the secure browser that those tests happen on. And once a Chromebook hits end of life, it will still function, but it won't accept that update. And so it's no longer usable for things like SBAC testing. And over time, there will be less and less that it's useful for because it's not able to be updated with each cycle. So it is something that we can kind of transition through, but as you point out, Student Board Member Khan, definitely something that we need to phase in so that we make sure that we're continuing to replace as quickly as we can.
Do we keep track of those things?
Yes, so Lucas is beginning to keep track of all of those inventories. One thing that we do in Fremont, which makes keeping track of that sometimes a very important task, is that we buy computers out of the district office level in many cases, but there are also cases where a school site might purchase computers directly. And I know that Mr. Bogle is doing a great job of trying to align and organize those things, because there is a lot to consider in terms of those purchases, where if you're looking at buying a Chromebook, one might be $50 cheaper, but it might have a shorter lifespan. And so sometimes it's better to spend the extra $50, $75, or $100 per unit if it means we get to keep them for another year or two longer. So that's how we try and help with that. And I know that we have an inventory tracking system as well. So we do keep track of the units.
But so then after these things are replaced, what are we going to do with those old Chromebook? Are we going to give them away to some other kids?
Well, that's something that the board would have an opportunity to weigh in on. And this is a great example that ties back to our prior discussion of surplus.
Surplus, yes.
So when we get the computers to a place where they're no longer useful necessarily in the classroom, then we surplus those and we see what options might be available. In my prior district, as an example, we had iPads that moved out of what we call end of life cycle. We surplus those and we worked with a third party company to sell them. And when we sold them, we were able to track that revenue. So generally, I would think those are some of the things that Fremont Unified has historically done with as much surplus equipment as it can. I don't know, Rais and Robbie, if you have any context if that's happened for us in the past.
That is true, sir. That's what my recollection. And purchasing department is the one who does the contacting with the third party organizations.
So we have never done that before on this selling the Chromebook.
Oh, we did for some equipment. I'm not 100% sure of Chromebooks.
Yeah,
But we did
sometimes
in
when we
some
surplus
equipment.
something, there's really not a market for it, but sometimes, and as Robbie's describing through purchasing, when we surplus something, there can be a market, and I think our team has done a good job of trying to resell any asset that we can when it's appropriate.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to see the outcome of that. Okay. So what else? This one, it will be a short meeting as well.
Yeah, about 14, 15 minutes, but that's okay.
But I actually really am interested on this Marshall. I think that's outcome. We really should, kind of do a thorough study to see what is the best thing to do. Right?
Yes, and I think once the board makes their decision, and I don't want to predetermine what that might be, but if the board were to make a decision to surplus the property, I think that gives staff the opportunity to start seeing who may be interested, what options might be there, and we can go out and gather and research and bring more ideas back to the Board of Education for consideration about what we see as a potential reality for that property.
So now this property is vacant.
Currently, it's not being occupied for a school system. We are using some of it for, I believe our maintenance and operation team has used it for some additional storage of air filters this year, given the increased supply that we've had or the need. And so I think other than having it being used for some storage capacity, it has been vacant of any people or programs.
Okay. All right. So do we know that anyone is interested in renting this place?
I don't know if there's any interested parties yet. I think once the property becomes surplus, we may we may see if there's some people who are interested, and we can begin doing some research on that front for the Board of Education.
Actually, CJ, I did get one inquiry in regards to the Marshall site
Okay.
I mean, for rent or for rent?
for rent.
I see. But also, I think if we want to, let's say we want to sell, how do we find the agent to sell this? Have we ever sold anything?
Generally,
Go ahead. I'm sorry,
Oh.
Superintendent, go ahead.
no, that's okay. I was going to say, I haven't been here long enough to necessarily know, but generally in school districts that I have worked on, when they've sold a property, they had an agreement with a realtor. And generally, it's a local realtor who helps the school district navigate that process. I don't know, Kelly, do you know of the last time we may have sold a property in Fremont?
I don't know the last time, but I do know that we have solicited the services of several real estate companies in the area. And we have kind of a small pool that we've created specifically to address that question as to, hey, what are we going to do when whatever decision is made? So once the decision is made, then we will then start the process and ask for proposals and solicitations for those services, and then bring it back to the board for whatever the next steps are once the board decides what they want to do.
Okay. All right, thanks. I guess
You're
I
welcome.
don't have any questions. See, without Vivek, the meeting is running short.
I can say, as I say in my staff meetings, it would be so nice of you to give us back 11 minutes of our hour to go ahead and continue to do the work of the district.
You know, actually, here's the question I feel. So we talk about this, and then we are not going to share what we learned to the rest of the board member. So I'm always kind of think how to best use of these meetings. You see what I mean? It's like
Yes.
only me and Vivek knows this, and then we kind of like, then what?
Well, what I can do is make sure that the other trustees are aware of the posting of the meeting, because it is posted on our website.
Uh-huh.
So they can review that information, and then any other information that we've reviewed, I can try and share those responses with our trustees. As long as I'm the one that's sharing that information out as the superintendent, we're in compliance with the Brown Act, so we're okay to do that.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.